Good evening, Jonathan Sauvé. I'm Khurram Usman. I am the Diplomatic Hub President, and thank you very much for today, your time, and thank you for this wonderful moment that we are here. Thanks a lot for that. So, Jonathan Sauvé is the Counsellor and Head of Section of Public Diplomacy, High Commission of Canada in the United Kingdom. Jonathan Sauvé completed LLB from University of de Montreal in 1998. He completed a graduate diploma in management from HEC Montreal School of Business 2004, joined the Department of Foreign Affairs and International Trade in 2006. In Ottawa, he served in the Criminal Security and Treaty Law Division, the Parliamentary Affairs Division, and the Office of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He served abroad in Washington, D.C. as Second Secretary Public Affairs, Deputy Spokesperson, and Head of Digital Advocacy and Research Group, and First Secretary and Executive Assistant in the Office of the Ambassador. He also served at the Embassy of Canada to Austria as Counselor and Program Manager, Foreign Policy and Diplomacy Services. He joined the Office of International Relations and Protocol of Ontario in 2007 and was Director International Relations and Chief of Protocol in Cabinet Office Ministry of Intergovernmental Affairs when he returned to London. So thank you very much for today, your time. So first of all, I will introduce regarding my society that we are a multidisciplinary society in the University of Exeter. Every year we have elections and then we have a new members team who will govern the society. It is just a diplomatic society where we offer to a student to understanding of diplomacy, and we will arrange even events in which different diplomats from different part of the world will turn up and they will share their opinion. One of the benefit of talking with all these diplomats is that you will know what is actually how the government see the things and how they explain those things to other people, because when you will see the media you are so confused what is true, what is untrue, because this is a different external opinion. And when you will know something from the government, you will get something internally and you will get the very correct picture and correct image of their view. So this is a very important job of my society. Being a president, I feel that I should provide much more opportunities to our students, and they will know in better way how to deal with the world and how the world diplomatic relations are going on, which is very important in terms of business, job, migration, on different aspects. And we are indirectly and directly affected by the diplomacy, because diplomacy, day-to-day diplomacy affect our business, our life, and all these changes happening in the world. Thank you very much, Mr. Jonathan. And now the podium is for you. Thank you very much.
Well, I think I'm going to approach this. I could talk for hours about Canada's foreign policy priorities, but you would be able to find the same information with 2 or 3 clicks, on websites. So I think beyond my little introduction, I'd be happy to have a chat, for like half an hour, and discuss with you. Monica said can't hear.
Yeah, I will check that why she can't hear. Mm. I will check that why she can't hear that.
Because you can hear me, right?
Yeah, I can hear.
Yeah,
I can hear. So I can hear Monica. Monica, I can hear you. Can you hear us? That because Jonathan and me have no difficulty to hearing each other. I don't know why you can't hear. Can you change your location or you can get in again? Monica, can you hear me? Okay. Oh, so
Okay.
other audience can hear. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. That's okay. Okay, she might have some problem that will be internally or externally. Okay. She will get a login again.
So I'll carry on. Yeah. So what I was going to say is that you know, beyond my my little introduction about who I am and the work that I do, I think we can take 30 minutes or so to have like a more informal conversation, so that I can actually address the questions that are of most interest to you, instead of rambling for hours and hours on topics you know, that are not necessarily at the top of your priorities. So you've described my journey so far really well, and I have indeed had the privilege of serving Canada in diplomatic missions in the United States, in Austria, and now in the United Kingdom. So it has been 17 years now since I joined the Foreign Service. That doesn't help me with like the, you know, like I'm kind of aging myself here, but it has been a formidable adventure, as you can imagine, being in the United States at the time of the Barack Obama inauguration was quite living a moment in history, and then being here now is also not exactly boring. There's a lot happening in the United Kingdom, and I'm very blessed as a Counsellor for Public Diplomacy to have the responsibility for all of the engagement that the Government of Canada does in the UK with. I tend to summarize it by saying that the UK, the general public, or the civil society. So my sister division. So I do public diplomacy. My sister division is the political section. So that's where we find my colleagues who do the more traditional diplomacy, like in the historical sense of the term. And by that I mean, you know, the relationship between a foreign government and the host government here in the United Kingdom. So my colleagues in the political section essentially are Canadian officials, you know, government officials, and their day-to-day job or mandate is to foster a good relationship with their equivalent in the UK government. So it's government officials to government officials. Whereas on my side, in the public diplomacy section, what we do, like I said earlier, is the interaction of the Canadian government with the UK civil society, or, like I said, the general public, meaning that in my day-to-day life and work, I interact very little with UK government officials. So my two main responsibilities in public diplomacy, we are a team of 9 locally engaged staff. So 3 are under our head of communications. So as you can imagine, you know, a big part of the engagement with the civil society or the general public is via the good old communications. So, you know, whether it is media relations or social media, you know, we are on several platforms, from Facebook to Twitter to Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it. And we do everything in Canada's both official languages. So it means, you know, for every channel in English, there's the equivalent in French. And then on the other side of our public diplomacy section, I have 5 team members who are responsible for all of our advocacy initiatives and our cultural diplomacy, because we use culture a lot as a leverage, kind of like a soft power leverage to advance 5 specific priorities that I'm gonna come back to in a minute. Well, actually, I can go straight to that. All of our advocacy initiatives or projects that we do with the UK civil society are anchored in 5 main priorities, namely, first, human rights, so including gender equality and the rights of LGBT plus persons. Then second, we have diversity and inclusion, including all the work that we do on anti-racism initiatives. The third one, very specific to Canada, is Indigenous reconciliation and expression. So, and that ties a lot with the cultural diplomacy that we do. How do we use cultural diplomacy as a way to give Canadian Indigenous peoples a chance to express themselves so that we can make progress towards a greater reconciliation? And then the fourth one, no surprise, is environment protection and climate action. And then the fifth one is innovation and prosperity. So we tried to help any and all initiatives that show Canada as a place where innovation could lead to prosperity. So that's basically the essence of the work that I do on a daily basis. We always try to work with a UK partner, and we try to demonstrate how Canada and the UK are aligned, not only on those advocacy priorities, but also more broadly on the general foreign policy priorities, such as Ukraine, our unwavering support for Ukraine. How do we approach the relationship with Russia? How do we deal with China, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So Canada and the UK are historically or have been historically linked for centuries. And the same can be said of France, because with France and the United Kingdom essentially being at the main reasons why we have 2 official languages in Canada, we do have a lot of similarities with the 2 nations that essentially led to modern Canada. But it is specifically true of the relationship between Canada and the United Kingdom, because there's a lot of historical people-to-people ties. Northern Irish and Scottish people actually crossed the ocean, long time ago, and were part of the founding peoples of Canada. So it is very common. My historical roots are more south of the English Channel, as perhaps you have noticed from this French Canadian accent of mine. But a lot of people outside of my home province of Quebec, you do find tons of people who find their roots somewhere in the United Kingdom. At the same time, Canada is a country that was built on immigration, and I've always been fascinated by one fact that I learned during my time with the government of Ontario. So in Toronto, Canada's largest city and metropolis, if you look at the list of countries officially recognized at the United Nations, and you look at the data from the census, so the statistics from the demographics of the city of Toronto, every single country recognized at the UN has a diaspora in Toronto, every single one of them. So we are indeed a country that was very much built on immigration, and we continue to have very ambitious targets on an annual basis, whether for influx of refugees that we are accepting, or the new Canadians that we welcome as immigrants, and it will continue to be like that. So yes, historical ties with the United Kingdom. We are both members of the G7, both members of the Commonwealth, both in the G20. So we are very much aligned, very much partners, very much allies and friends. Some people say we're family, essentially. Does that mean that we agree on absolutely everything? Not always. But I can think of quite a long list of countries in the world where we have like more frictions or tensions. The relationship between Canada and the UK is good, and we do work a lot together on a lot of files, and we try to align. For example, if we adopt a new round of sanctions against people we believe are linked to some conflicts in the world, well, we try to do so in consultation or in cooperation with countries like the United Kingdom. So it is, in a nutshell, how I would describe the Canada-UK relationship at the moment. There is a lot to be done on a variety of levels. We always we always try to find ways to learn from each other, and to build new relationships and new links. So if we do something for International Women's Day at Canada House on Trafalgar Square, well, we try to bring to our building, NGOs or not-for-profit organizations who are active in this file in the United Kingdom, so that we can build links with Canadian organizations as well, and so that we can learn from each other, and we can exchange best practices and ideas, and we do so also very much so on the cultural diplomacy front. When we bring Canadian artists and performers to the UK, we try to build those relationships with local partners, local stakeholders, local organizations. We did it a lot over the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham last summer, and that was a fantastic opportunity, because it gave us a chance to bring Canadians here who did not only have an interaction with British people, but because it was the Commonwealth Games, like the horizons were very broad, and we had fantastic initiatives in Birmingham over 6 months. It was not all needed to 2 weeks of the actual games, the sports, but it was a lot of cultural initiatives over a 6-month festival, and we do so in Edinburgh during the festivals in August every year. We have like between 60 and, well, last summer we had around 70 performers in all of the festivals in Edinburgh, and it opens doors for Canadian artists and performers, and we tried to give them a shot at getting a contract for a show in London, and it did work in some cases, and we're always very happy about that. So I think I might stop here. I was trying to give you a sense of what we do in the foreign policy and diplomacy service that I belong to. Of course, I'm not going to talk about our trade section, or our immigration section, our military contingent. There's 300 of us working at Canada House on Trafalgar Square. Our foreign policy and diplomacy service is a relatively small part of the operation. Our trade colleagues are very much busy at the moment facilitating negotiations for a bilateral free trade agreement between Canada and the UK. In the post-Brexit era, the free trade agreement that we had with the European Union continued to apply for a certain time as a transitory mode. But now we are very much hoping to conclude the negotiations for a free trade agreement between Canada and the UK sometime in 2023. My colleagues from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada are very much have their hands full at the moment, being the hub for visa applications from Afghanistan, from Ukraine. London is very much like a big part of this operation. So yeah, there's never a boring day. Always something new popping up, and yeah, we take one challenge at a time, and we try to make sure to advance our objectives and our priorities the best we can. Always in a spirit of cooperation and friendship with the UK.
Thank you for this very wonderful briefing. It's very interesting role you have it, and interestingly, you are dealing with the people-to-people contact, which is a very meaningful thing. And what I heard that the diplomacy mean people-to-people contact, not just a government-to-government contact. So it's really my understanding is that. So I find from your profile that you have served in the Washington, D.C. According to my understanding, the difficult job for a diplomat is working in the Washington, D.C. It's a very tough environment. People are very competent there, because I heard from the trade negotiations that when you will go, you will find 50 or 60 attorneys in the US group. They are much more qualified. When you will just go to conferences, or you will go for communication, you will find a very sober and very intelligent diplomat, US diplomats, which are more qualified. They have a upper hand in knowledge as compared to the other countries. So it's very difficult job for somebody to deal there and work there. So can you share your experience of the US and how you can explain to us and how you give us a broad picture of that experience?
Yeah, it is indeed a very tough market, because, like you said, the State Department, so the U.S. Foreign Ministry, is a beast. It's a very large, very big organization. I have discovered over the years that there isn't such a thing as a small U.S. embassy, it seems. You look at any U.S. embassy around the world, and they are present in big numbers. They have a lot of people on the ground, a lot of people at their headquarters back in Washington. So when I served there, what you are saying is something that I experience on a daily basis. Because my responsibility at the time, I was a spokesperson in the media relations office. So my responsibility was basically to find ways to tell the Canadian story, our Canadian story, in the US media. So you can imagine when you're, in Washington, D.C., and you try to get the attention of the Washington Post, or you try to get the attention of the New York Times, or you try to get the attention of the USA Today, or CNN, or all the CBS, NBC affiliates, and the radio stations, and PBS, and it's very, very difficult. And every time we had Canada mentioned, even like a brief mention in a short story, it was a little victory because we had achieved something that day. I do remember, and bear in mind, Canada is, we share the longest non-militarized border in the world, about 8,000 kilometers, like the Canada-US border. So it is a very tight relationship. Canada, I think, is the #1 export market for like 30 something of the US states. It is definitely Canada's largest trade partner by far. 400,000 people cross the Canada-US border on a daily basis. I forget what the trade figures are nowadays, but it's billions of dollars of trade between the two countries, like on a daily basis. I remember at the time that I was there, we had examples of like some goods that basically would cross the border like 5, 6, or 7 times before they would be final and ready to be sold on the retail market for like cars, for example. So despite the fact that we are like this like big neighbor to the north, but maybe not big in terms of population, but certainly big in terms of territory, certainly big in terms of like the size of our economic relationship. Being at the Canadian Embassy in Washington, D.C. Was a daily challenge in terms of getting on the radar of, in my case, the U.S. media, but also my colleagues in the Congressional Affairs Office, trying to get an appointment with a member of Congress, trying to get an appointment with a U.S. senator. You need to develop very good working relationships. You need to know who works where. You need to have their cell phone number. So in my case, I would, and that's part of the role of like, sometimes people say, so, but nowadays, like we have like video meetings now, we have Teams, we have Zoom, like why can't we just do all that, from the capital? Yes, there's like, challenges of like different time zones, but even in 2022, in this, new era, there is nothing like the people-to-people relationships and the contacts that you make. And you go to an event and you start talking to someone and you exchange business cards and you go for coffee the week after, and you build your relationship. And then one day you need to contact someone about something specific, and you say, what, I do have in my contacts, I know who I'm going to call because I met him 6 months ago, or I met her a year ago, and I have their phone number, and I know how I have them on WhatsApp, and that's the kind of relationship that you need to build as a diplomat to be effective. And it was different, of course, because I was in Washington from 2007 till 2011. So, social media was already a thing, but video meetings, like not so much. So being on the ground, having people, able to network, develop relationships, is always something that is very, very important to advance your priorities and advance your objectives. And that's not something you can do by staying at your desk. And that's how it was so difficult to do our job during the pandemic, or the worst of the pandemic, because, being in here, I have this nice background, but I'm actually at home right now. And, being at home, it is not the best way to be efficient in diplomacy. You need to go out, you need to reach out, to branch out, to meet people, and develop a relationship, and foster and maintain that relationship. And that's not something you can do from the comfort of your home. So yeah, sadly, during my time in Washington, you can be assured that whenever there was something a bit controversial or a bit, then the media would jump on the story and try to fill the news cycle with the big headlines, that are always very dramatic. And that would put us in sometimes reactive mode or damage control mode. But that's not exactly what you want to accomplish. You want to push your good news, your good stories, your key messages, and but we would do it, from time to time, and be successful at having the Canadian story told in the media. And also, I think what's important, and it applies to the UK to a certain extent, you have to remember that Washington, D.C. is not the United States, and London is not the UK. I always talk about how easy it is to get caught in what here in the UK, what I call the London bubble, or I was called, the Washington bubble in the US. You have to branch out, and you have to remember that you have to cover ground outside of the capital. The UK has 4 nations, and it's important to be present and meet people and develop relationships in Scotland, in Northern Ireland, and in Wales, in addition to England. And it was the same in Washington. It's even more of a challenge in the US, as you can imagine. With 50 states, and at the time, I think we had 20 or 21 consulates all over the territory. So for the ambassador in Washington, it was a lot of ground to cover, with the help of our consulates across the country. But there's never a day that you can come home and feel that you've accomplished everything you wanted to do that day. There's always a long list the to-do list is always too long, and it never seems to get shorter, because when you strike 2 things off the to-do list, sometimes you add 5. But that's what makes the job interesting. No 2 days are the same, and that's what makes it fascinating.
Thank you, Jonathan. Yeah, you made a very interesting point in the communication, that you have to deal with the Congress, you have to check in with the Senate, and you have to deal with the State Department. So in terms of diplomacy, how much it is important that you have a good connection in a State Department comparatively, rather than the Congress, because in the Congress they are different members, they will come from the different part of the US and they have a different narrative. But which one is the most influential branch for somebody to do diplomacy or to do lobbying there, to convince them? Which part is so important? Yeah, thank
Well,
you.
I think the essence of our work is to we have the 3 branches of government, the executive, legislative, and judicial. Of course, in the course of our work as diplomats, we don't interact with the judicial. So it's basically the executive and the legislative branches, so the government and parliament. And I think you have to do both. It's the challenge in the US is that the party line, or the party discipline is not nowhere near what it is in the UK. Mind you, in the UK, you do sometimes hear dissent from the backbenchers, or some fragments of the opposition. Not everyone agrees all the time, but I remember once someone said during my time in Washington that there are 435 members of the House of Representatives in the US, and 100 senators. So the total is 535. and someone said, and each and every one of them is their own political party. So because they do have a lot more autonomy. Well, yeah, autonomy. They do follow a certain line, a certain discipline. But at the end of the day, when a U.S. member of the House of Representatives or a U.S. senator want to go their own way, they go their own way. So it was very important to not take for granted that, we talked to one party, so everyone in the party is gonna follow the same, the same line of thought or the same discipline. It's like, no, yeah, you need to have 535 relationships, with the elected officials and the members of their staff, and so it takes a lot of people. It takes a lot of effort, and again, not something that you can do from home. You need to go out to be out there and meet people and develop the right relationships, and here in the UK, it's it's important to maintain a relationship with all the cabinet ministers and their respective ministries, but it's also important to maintain good relations with parliamentarians in Westminster. And we had a delegation not long ago. We had a delegation of Canadian parliamentarians who were here to meet with their UK counterparts, and it's also something that we do a lot in diplomatic missions. Supporting visits from Canada here in the UK or at any Canadian mission in the world. Whether it's a visit by the Prime Minister or a visit by the Governor General or any of our ministers and also our parliamentarians. So we leave no stone unturned, and we make sure that we have networks where it matters, and that includes both the government and Parliament. So both the executive and legislative branches.
Oh, that's great. So I will just pin to one point about the lobbying firms. So I don't know why either there are some lobbying firms are working in Canada or not, but in the US it is very common that there are lobbying firms. They will influence their congressmen, their senators, and they are doing a very difficult job, which is not easy for any other person to do it. So have your governments or the other governments, they contact with the lobbying firms, how much they are effective in their work as compared to your own contact, your own work, because you are a diplomat, you went there, somebody's coming there, you are dealing with them. And these lobbying firms are already in the US and they are working there for years and years, and they know people from very grassroots, they have a relationship. So can you explain about that?
I don't have a lot of experience of working with lobbying firms. Of course, they are all over Washington. I don't have a good appreciation of the situation here in London, but definitely in Washington, lobbyists are everywhere. And like I said, I'm not too familiar with that aspect. What I can say is that in Canada it's very regulated. People who operate as lobbyists need to register themselves, and they need to report who they meet with and what was the reason, and when and why, and so it's very well. There's clearly an effort to make things clear and transparent. I don't know necessarily nowadays because I've always I've been away from the US for 11 years already. So I don't know exactly how it works nowadays, but it is definitely true that lobbies in the US are like perhaps nowhere else in the world. they are big machines. They have lots of money, if when they go after something, it's hard for us to compete with firms like that, because when you think about it, what diplomats do is a form of lobbying, right? We call it advocacy. We promote, we defend our interests. The difference is that we are not doing it. Our client is not a private company or a lobby or a group of citizens. We do it on behalf of the government of Canada. And so we are regulated differently. There's the Vienna Convention on Diplomatic Relations that states very clearly what we can and cannot do. And we follow that, and we work along those guidelines. No system is perfect. People can sometimes complain about how powerful lobbies can be in the United States, but no system is perfect. So no democracy is perfect. It's always a work in progress, and we're all trying to do our best to have all the ingredients to make democracy work in the best way possible. So.
Yeah, so thank you. You refer to democracy, and this is the biggest challenge nowadays. You can see that there is a lot of difficulties to enforce the human rights globally, and the third world countries are now in a very desperate situation due to post corona. There is an economic crisis there, and a lot of things are going on, and the World Bank is dealing with all these things. So I will ask you, Jonathan, when we will talk about the diplomacy and democracy, sorry, when we will talk about the democracy, that's a very fantastic words, and that resound a very strong will of the people, and the people say, and that's a very interesting thing. Everybody wants to speak up. Everybody wants their right. It's very common. But now we will see the global scenario after the Ukraine war. Now it is the biggest challenge for the diplomatic world to deal with autocracy that cause a big problem and suffering to the human being. And now it is very difficult and big challenge to enforce a human rights, because I check your website, you are offering a residency to the Hong Kong people, you are offering a residency to Afghan people, you are dealing with the Ukrainian people, and now the crisis is piling up further and further. If there is another war, we wish it should not be, then there will be more demand for just allowing people to come to Canada, UK, USA. So how this immigration crisis is building up day by day, and the Ukraine war is going on, and there is no end of this war until now, because the UK government has made a lot of efforts. Your country made a lot of efforts in this regard. They are pumping money, they are providing a weapon, they are supporting the refugees, but there is no diplomatic solution. So do you think that how tough and how much difficult to deal with this challenge?
Well, it is true that the Ukrainian invasion by Russia, sadly, we are gonna soon after the holidays, at the end of February on the 24th, we are already gonna recognize or mark the 1-year anniversary of the invasion. So this conflict has already been going on for too long, and it cannot end soon enough. We do believe that there is. We are trying not to cut all of the diplomatic ties, speaking for Canada, that we have with Russia. For example, unlike other countries, we've decided or chosen not to ask the Russians to close their embassy in Ottawa. So we have not expelled all the Russian diplomats from Canada, which allowed us to keep our embassy open in Moscow with a much smaller footprint than we normally have. But we do still have people on the ground, and that allows us to continue to receive reports and cables, from our colleagues who are at the Canadian Embassy in Moscow and are able to talk to different people in NGOs, in think tanks, in the media, from various lines of thought and politically. So we do think that it is important to maintain that channel of communication. Meanwhile, it is a very much an armed conflict, and we are doing everything we can to support Ukraine, whether via NATO or direct, participation from Canada. So, for example, we are training Ukrainian soldiers here in the United Kingdom. Canadian forces are training Ukrainian soldiers in the UK. We have provided, money, military equipment, and we will continue to do so for as long as necessary. So, if I had a crystal ball and were able to tell you how this is going to end and when, I'd be a very famous and a very famous person. So no one knows really where we're going to be if we had this chat again in a year. No one knows where this is going to be. But for as long as this illegal invasion is gonna last, Canada will be a steadfast, like the UK, steadfast ally and supporter of Ukraine. Yeah, let's see what the future has in store.
Yeah,
I'm just going to check. I see in the chat there's a question. What kind of conversation do you have? Can you tell us what the section there? Oh yeah, so basically the question goes back to relationships with the Congress people. So back to the U.S., to the other side of the ocean. Actually, like I said earlier, we do use a lot any opportunities brought by the visit of the Canadian, especially our elected officials. So yes, when we have parliamentarians or ministers or prime minister in town, we do ask for meetings, and we do go directly. After establishing a relationship, sometimes with the political staffers, so the people that work in the office of a congressperson or a senator, we do maintain the relationship throughout the year. And then when we have a parliamentarian coming from Canada or a minister, and they say we want to meet with Congressperson XYZ, or we want to have a meeting with Senator ABC, then we're able to pick up the phone and or send a message, an email, or like I said, even better if you have them on WhatsApp, and have the direct contact to say. And we do put official requests in for meetings, and yes, we do as diplomats, we do go into those meetings. If only because there's always a need for a note taker, right? Someone has to be in the room to take notes from the meeting. Sometimes the meetings are one-on-one, when sometimes two elected officials want a bit of privacy, or want to have a private meeting. But most of the time, and you do see that on social media when you see photos of people meeting on Capitol Hill in Washington, you sometimes you see a photo of a table, with the two principals on each side of the table, and they are flanked by some people next to them who are also part of those meetings. So yes, it is part of the job of a Canadian diplomat to assist when you have your ambassador or your high commissioner or elected officials visiting from Canada. It is part of the work that we do.
So I will turn to your previous conversation. Jonathan, do you see that the fall of Afghanistan encouraged Putin to invade Ukraine because they saw that coalition forces were engaged in Afghanistan for 20 years and more than that, and then they have decided to withdraw, and they have signed an agreement with Taliban at that time, so that gives them some encouragement. Okay, so they are failed there supposedly, and now if I will move to the Ukraine, they might be not so strong, or they will not go to confrontation. And what we could see now that NATO is not involving directly in the conflict. So what do you say about that?
Well, I'm afraid I'm not the right person to comment on the possible links or not between the withdrawal from Afghanistan and the current conflict in Ukraine. I think what is happening in Ukraine at the moment goes as far back as 2014 with the illegal annexation of Crimea, which has been denounced ever since. And what the Russians have demonstrated now is that clearly it wasn't enough, and their ambitions had no boundaries. So I think what is important is for the international community to remain, like I said, steadfast allies of Ukraine. I think the Russians might have been a little surprised by how strong the NATO stick together, how the West, like they say, has remained very coordinated and very determined in the support that Ukraine has been receiving. So I think what we have to hope for is that whatever we have seen so far that has led Ukraine, to fight back and they're still standing and they're still fighting back and regaining territory, and I think what has led to now is something that we need to see at least the same level, if not more, in the future, to hopefully bring this conflict to an end, so that we can then turn our attention to the future and the reconstruction and all the efforts that are going to be necessary to give Ukrainians their lives back and their cities back, and allow them to go home. For those who have found refuge in Poland or other neighboring countries, I think it will be the work of, I was going to say, a decade, probably more, once this conflict comes to an end, and Canada will be present. Like we have we have 1.4, so roughly, I think the Canadian population is around 37 million at the moment. We have 1.4 million Canadians who claim heritage, Ukrainian heritage or background. So it is, I believe, the second largest Ukrainian diaspora in the world, and we are very much engaged and very much determined to support Ukraine and their Ukrainians for as long as it's going to take. So
Oh, that's great. And what is, and I found by research that your country has enforced Xinjiang autonomous region, some kind of sanction on the China. So I will ask that how you will see your country policy towards China, because China is big economic power and that have a relationship with the United Nations, UK, and they need them in terms of climate change, which is a very sensitive issue in the world now because it's affect the life of each and every human being and even animals. So what's your country policy to deal with China?
Well, again, conscious of the fact that China can cause disruption on the international stage. We do work again. It's another occasion of where we have decided not to cut all diplomatic ties or relationships. As we speak in Canada, in Montreal, the COP15 UN conference on biodiversity is coming to an end, and the conference was going to take place in China, but because of their COVID policies that are still very strong, the conference was moved to Canada. So it's basically a China-hosted conference that is being held in Canada. So, you know, where it matters, for example, for the future of our biodiversity, and we do continue to work with China and talk to China. They are, of course, an economic powerhouse, and we need to maintain a dialogue. But I think what we can see in Canada now is to try and think beyond China. If you haven't seen it yet, I would encourage you to look for our new Indo-Pacific strategy that Canada has released just a couple of weeks ago, I think. And you will see there that there is definitely not a change of focus, but definitely an effort to, like I said, go beyond China. You know, Asia and the Indo-Pacific region is not only about China, and you will see renewed efforts from Canada to engage in the Indo-Pacific region, whether with new offices, you know, including in parts of the world where we are not necessarily present at the moment, and I think this is going to lead to an interesting new chapter in, you know, the way we approach our relationship with China. It's now going to be not only and all about China. It will, you know, expand the horizons, and the more efforts will be spent on the whole of the Indo-Pacific region as a whole. So
yeah. So when we talk,
I just see another question in the chat from Monica asking about opportunities at Canada House. Well, I would suggest that Monica, that you monitor our website. There is all of the job opportunities at Canada House are advertised on our website and our social media channels. If you are not a Canadian diplomat on posting here, like me, the other way to work at Canada House is as a locally engaged staff. And to do so, you need to have a work authorization in the UK. So if most of the positions that we hire for are on an indeterminate basis, so for permanent positions, and so for that you need to have the proper documentation to work in the UK on, you know, independently. But there are sometimes shorter contracts that we can, for which we can consider people on a graduate visa, for example, think that that's the 2-year visa after once you've completed graduate studies, or people on a youth mobility visa. But we do not, unlike in the private sector, for example, we do not sponsor work people for their work authorization. So people need to have on their own the right to work in the UK. So,
thank you. So
I'll go back to you maybe for 1 or 2 more questions, because then I'm going to have to run.
Okay, yeah. So these are my just last remaining question. Thank you very much for your time. So my question is that when you talk about the Indo-Pacific, we will see that the China and the India conflict, and there was it's very between them. The West is not very engaged in that. There is a territory problem between two countries, and you will see the forces are fighting day by day. So how you will see this movement in the context of Indo-Pacific?
Not sure I follow.
I said that if you will see that there is a fight between Indian soldiers and the Chinese soldier on their border, there is a conflict which is going on between them for the last 6 or 7 months or more than that. And the India is the member of Indo-Pacific. So, but we did not hear much from the West regarding that. So what do you say about that? What is your country position on this conflict, and how you will support the India in this situation?
I'm really sorry. I'm afraid I'm not the right person to comment on that topic. I'm very much focused on the Canada-UK relationship, the bilateral relationship at the moment. So there are broader topics or issues that I can speak to in broader terms. But I will confess that this is beyond what I'm able to comment on at the moment.
Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. Yeah. Thank you. No problem. No problem. So, and my last question is coming to the, that you are part of the UK allies. So how do you see the Hong Kong issue and that, because your country is providing a lot of support to Hong Kong resident, and they are supporting them. So what is the solution of this problem you see, and what is your policy regarding the Hong Kong?
Well, we have offered the option to the people of Hong Kong to apply for a special visa to come to Canada. You have to remember that from the UK, we tend to think of Canada as the country of the east coast of Canada, and the fact that Canada is on the Atlantic Ocean. But we have to remember that Canada is big enough that if you go to the other end of Canada, we're also on the Pacific Ocean. We're also on the Arctic in the north, but that's irrelevant at the moment. But being also on the Pacific Ocean, hence the interest, and the release of our Indo-Pacific strategy. But I do remember that from spending one summer in Vancouver, in British Columbia, when I was a student, that there, when we talk about the Canada-UK people-to-people ties, from sometimes, mostly from Central and Eastern Canada and Atlantic Canada, there are a lot of people-to-people ties in Vancouver, going west to China and Hong Kong, and I do remember even God, it was the summer of 2000, I believe, that I spent in Vancouver as a law student, and I was able to see firsthand that after China, after the territory of Hong Kong was returned to China in 1997, there are already a lot of people from Hong Kong who decided to immigrate to Canada and make British Columbia their new home. So there are a lot of people-to-people ties on the West Coast, going towards the other the other side of the other ocean. So that explains why, in the current context, Hong Kong is going through difficult times. I think their democracy is at risk, or the democratic institutions that they used to have, and that explains why Canada has opened its doors for people from Hong Kong to apply for a special visa program, and I think there will always because of the fact that we have and that's one way perhaps to wrap up, given what we discussed earlier. But you have to remember that the United States, our neighbor to the south, longest undefended border, will always be top of mind for Canadian diplomats and Canada in general. And after my posting in the US, I said, every Canadian diplomat should go on posting to the US at some point in their career, preferably early in their career, to understand the dynamic of the Canada-US relationship. From the East Coast and the Atlantic Ocean, we have this bridge to Europe, and Europe as a continent, so including the United Kingdom, and that gives us a world of opportunities with another economic powerhouse. But I think what's brilliant about Canada is, like, if you go to the West Coast and the Pacific Ocean, then we have our gateway to Asia, and I'm very excited about this new Indo-Pacific strategy that we've just released. I think it's going to bring a new era. The relationship on the East Coast, the transatlantic relationship is well established, goes back a long time, and I think now we have interesting days ahead with this new Indo-Pacific strategy. So I will encourage you to take a look if you haven't already. There's a lot to digest in there. It's quite an interesting read.
Oh, definitely. I will take a look, and we will hopefully next time we will invite you and you will talk about the Indo-Pacific. That was a very introductory conference, and thank you very much. You give us a lot of wonderful information, first-hand information, and that we learn from your wonderful experience, from your first-hand experience. Thank you very much for that, for your time. I appreciate
My
your
pleasure.
time, and I'm very happy to see you, to hear you, and I hope everybody enjoyed it. And we have already recorded that conference, and so many people will hear you online, and that will be a wonderful experience also for them.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.